What is HDR, or high dynamic range? As a lot of people really throw this around and say this is what we do. A lot of it isn't true high dynamic range anyway, and I don't want to get into the technicalities of that, and to be honest I couldn't go there. It's pretty deep to really get through, and you could just look up a Google tutorial if you're that way inclined. What we're talking about here is technically called exposure blending, and what happens is on a modern SLR camera you have the opportunity to set an exposure bracketing. So firstly, sorry, let me explain to you why that happens. Well, I'm sitting here in my office looking out the window and I can cope perfectly well. This is well lit, and outside I can see all the detail as well. Now you've probably found this out with your camera or a phone even, and the camera on a phone. If you point inside and you get this lit well, your windows will just blow out. They will be totally burnt out white. If you point out the window, everything inside goes black. Now that's a challenge, and it's a problem with a camera, that it doesn't have that same range as what our human eye does. So what we do to compensate for that, what I started saying a minute ago, is that the camera will actually set 3 exposure levels. So if I'm taking a shot shooting straight down here, I want to expose for in this room, and I want to expose for the window. So what it will do, it will set, I choose 3 photos. So one at a consistent level that I'm happy with, or slightly darker. I then go for one brighter that will fill in all the dark areas and the gaps, the shadow areas, and then I shoot another one that will expose for the windows outside. And what this will do is, in the software, I can compress those together and it will pull out the highlights out of the dark photo, and it'll bring up the dark areas from the one that's overexposed and the other areas. So what you're doing is you're getting the best bits and pulling it together, and it will give you a flatter image. So you're seeing detail at all extremes of the dynamic range. Now you can see, I can look through some of my competitors, and I won't mention them here, but I can tell straight away that they've overdone this HDR or exposure blending, and actually the pictures can look quite watery, almost like a watercolouring, because it's taken all those sharp edges and it's had to compress them, and it's made a decision whether it thinks it should pull from one of the 3 images or the other. I'm not a huge fan of it. I use it where I need to. Certainly it's the winter at the minute, and if I'm taking photos outside, shadows can be pretty harsh. So it might be that if I'm doing the front of a building, I need to use it. But I use it quite sparingly, and actually in a room, I would probably, in the camera, shoot those 3 exposures, but I would pick out my best one and work with that. And all I will do is bring in the exposed image for outdoors, and I would just literally cut that into each of the windows. Now that's a much longer way of doing it, but to me it gives a much better result at the end of it, and that's what I'm all about. These are the kind of things that are reflected in the price. When you're saying, hey, you know, you're half as much again as one of your competitors, well, that's where that extra cost is coming in, is that we're taking the time to really give you the best quality image you can get at the end of it. So no corners cut, we really don't go over the top and don't use it unless we need to. But yes, we are more than capable, and at our own judgment really decide whether or not your photo, your tour requires HDR editing. If you want to ask us more about that, feel free to either leave comments on here or pick up the phone and ask me. Thank you.